spend some time talking about the composition section, paper 1. As we know, it's worth 100 marks, which is 25% of your paper, so it's massive. And you've got, depending on the student, most people will spend upwards of 70 minutes writing their composition, which I think is about right. You will have 7 options, and amongst those options, you can expect to see a speech, a short story, and a personal essay, at least one of those types of options, and you can expect there to be 2 of one of those options. So maybe 2 speeches or 2 short stories, as was the case in a number of mocks this year, and or 2 personal essays. And the personal essay is very, very, very popular. And my sense is that the reason there's been 2 personal essay options on the exam for the last few years is because of that popularity, to bring a bit of variety in. So anyway, I just want to talk really briefly about the personal essay. I've obviously already made a video in which I've explained my approach to personal essay writing, but I just want to go through the fundamentals of what makes a good personal essay, and I want to talk about why I believe these to be the fundamentals, and I want to talk about other options in the exam which a lot of students ignore or don't pay any attention to, and yet if you prepare for the personal essay, you've done a lot of the work for those types of options. Anyway, that's overcomplicating things. So look, we know that if you look at the marking schemes, it says that everything that you're being examined on in paper 1 is examined in relation to your understanding of genre. So that phrase is so important for paper 1, understanding of genre. What does it mean? It means that you have studied, and they list the 5 language genres: information, persuasion, argument, narrative, and aesthetic language in the marking schemes. In 2022, it was there again listed. But we know that essentially information is rarely examined. I think, is it once it was examined, maybe twice? And that personal writing and the speech is more and more examined in the comprehensions. Okay, so with personal writing preparation, you can be asked to analyse somebody else's personal writing, as happens all the time. And there's usually, well, can we say there always is a composing section? We can't say that there will be, but there always has been a personal essay option in the composing section. We know that, and again, I noticed in a couple of mocks this year, the word to reflect on, the instruction to reflect on, was not in questions on personal essays, which I find very strange because it's the core component of a personal essay. Might be a bit of noise outside the door now, apologies. But you have to be reflective, and that means there has to be a sense of thinking about the observation that you're making in the light of the question, and the sense of kind of how you grew from it, or how it changed you, or lessons learned. So that's core in a personal essay. If you don't have that reflective element, it's not a personal essay. Okay, now I know you know this already, just revision. A big problem, I think, is people pick the personal essay because they think that's the only type of composition I can write. That's a mistake. You know, some years the title might be lovely, other years it might not suit you. So I think it's really important that you don't decide, I'm writing the personal essay. I think that you look at the title and you ask yourself, does the title resonate with me? So when I think about birthdays and their significance, can I think of 15 things I can say about birthdays and why they're significant? If I can narrow that down to 5 interesting things to say, then that's a good option for me. If I can't really think about that and why they're significant, well then maybe I'm not going to look at a personal essay. So I think it's really important, with 3 months to go with this section, that you start taking the composition seriously, and that you start thinking about, okay, well look, how do I prepare for that section? And I think you go and you look at every single set of composition titles for the last 10 years on examinations.ie, start with 2022, and go and look at the titles and say, that year, which one would I have done? And start planning out responses. You don't have to write the responses, but the process of thinking about them and planning them out will help you as you move towards the real thing in the exam. There's an expectation that you will be honest in a personal essay. For a long time, the phrase in the marking scheme was that it would have a confessional tone. That's slightly changed. I'm going to show you that in a second. But the same quality in the writing is expected, that you're going to write in a way which is quite candid, C-A-N-D-I-D, meaning that you're not going to be guarded, that whatever you write about, you're going to write about in a very open way, maybe an element of self-deprecation, a little bit of humour always makes writing interesting, as long as it's gentle. And self-deprecation means, the ability to look at yourself and tell a story maybe that you don't maybe come out the most heroic person in the story. It might be a story that's told, and the humour in it is at your cost, but still that can be quite an appealing aspect of a personal essay. And of course, it's really important that you don't get overwrought and start becoming really emotional in a personal essay. So you can be heartfelt and honest and sincere without being, very, very emotional. I think that balance is important. Think about Elizabeth Bishop's poetry is probably a good example. Now I'm coming to anecdotes. And look, a personal essay needs anecdotes. A personal essay is, in essence, a piece of argumentative writing. You have a thesis statement. So, for example, there are places in the world that have shaped the person I am today. That's a thesis statement, and that needs evidence to prove that's true. I have a very clear understanding of freedom. That's a thesis statement. Then you need to provide the evidence to back it up. There are many parts of my life which fill me with pride. That's a thesis statement. How do you support those? You do it with telling little stories from your experience. And I've had a couple of people come to me in the last couple of weeks after the mock saying that their teachers or their examiners have told them that material is not relevant, or it's whatever. They've been criticised for including it. All I can say to you is that the marking schemes for English consistently state that anecdotes are a required element of a strong personal essay, that whether or not you choose to include them, I'll show you. Look, here's the marking scheme, look, from 2022. There's the personal essay option 2022 on faithful companions. There's the instruction that students must display understanding of genre. And there's the note which says that the expectation would be that an element of personal writing is the inclusion of personal anecdotes and observations about those stories. Now, how well you integrate your anecdotes into your overall argument, that's up to you. And if a teacher feels that you've gone off topic and you're telling a story, but you're not telling it and you haven't embedded it into the point that you're making, well then there's very little control I would have over that. But it is absolutely the case that a personal essay which is populated by little brief anecdotes which help illustrate your points, those are good personal essays, or that's a good tack to take if you're writing the personal essay. Okay? So an anecdote, a very brief little story that you're telling that has a little bit of colour in it, maybe, a little bit of descriptive or narrative writing in it, a little bit of aesthetic language in it, appealing to the senses, makes it immersive and interesting to read. So those are a required part of a good personal essay. Again, how you execute that and how an examiner or how a teacher judges you on your execution of that, that's, I suppose, that's in the lap of the gods. That's really to do with practice. It's got to do with your awareness of looking at good personal writing and staying on task. But the most important thing is that you embed those anecdotes, that you tie them into the thesis, the overarching point that you're trying to make in your essay. So look, what other things am I looking out for in a personal essay? Looking out for substance. If it's too short, I can't reward it too much. I'm looking for a decent introduction which grabs my attention and is somehow original and has a bit of personality about it. I'm looking for a nice structure, a real sense that the student is in control and they've decided to write a personal essay because they know how to write them. And as you know in class, and I'll show you, if you want me to do another video, just let me know. You can drop me a comment on this one showing you how to do that. If you're not in my classes, then that's no problem. But I've given you copious examples of how to do it. Okay, so the A-B paragraph structure where you start off with your topic sentence on, I don't know, what was last year's exam question? Faithful companions, and if you're going to talk, the big mistake there, of course, everybody wrote with their bloody phone. But if you're going to write about books, because from the time you were a child, you've been reading books, and as you now are entering adulthood, they're still playing an important part in helping you understand the world or helping you escape from the stresses of the world. And then you give a little anecdote, maybe a little story about a time when a book really helped you cope or brought joy to your life. That's what the question is at. That's what it requires. You have to give those details to fill them in. And by the way, when it says revealing personal insights, that's the reference to being honest. And when it says an authentic personal voice, that is a reference to the fact that there's an expectation that you're going to, pay attention to detail and not write in kind of broad cliches and general statements which you're not quantifying or substantiating or explaining. And one of the things that really makes a personal essay, obviously you have to use the personal pronoun, I, me, and my all the way through it. But one of the things that really makes a personal essay sparkle is the attention to little details that brings the writing to life. So that attention to detail can really give an essay a sense of, identity, making it identifiably yours. So you're not all writing the same bloody thing, and you're not. And when you are writing about something that you think is relevant, that you're throwing in those little anecdotes and little details that make that believable and realistic and engaging for a reader. Now look, there's no magic formula here, but these are the qualities of a good personal essay. We know the structure is important. And again, it's always worth going to the marking schemes and asking yourself what's an examiner looking for in a personal essay. Obviously, you have to deal with the particular wording of the question. Then you have to show understanding of genre. That's explicitly mentioned at the start of the paper one marking scheme and then at every composition. And it then gives you, as an examiner, or as somebody who's trying to learn what an examiner is looking for, a list of things that the chief examiner for English says are elements of personal writing, written in the first person, so the personal pronoun I, me, my. A reflective, thoughtful tone. You're not just telling a story, you're thinking about the reasons why something is significant, or what you learned from it, or how it changed you, or whatever the hell. That you are, including little anecdotes to bring colour and life and detail and personality to your story. That you're writing in a way that's honest, and you're never wandering off the point. That's always question facing and topic aware. And then if you can add in something that makes your work in terms of the content, or the way you write, your imagination, your use of various different techniques. A lot of the techniques from persuasive writing could be brought in, rhetorical questions, repetition, buzzwords to create an emotional tone, monosyllabic language to, create a real sense of emphasis on a particular point. There's a million little factors that can make a really good personal essay. It's very easy to hurl from the ditch. It's very easy for a teacher or whoever it is to say, no, that's shit. What you have to do is take a positive attitude, reframe. Ask yourself, right, if I am going to write the personal essay, am I doing these things? Am I making sure that I'm fulfilling those requirements? And then you have to trust that the leaving certificate is marked by people who care about it being marked accurately and consistently. And if that's what the marking scheme says, then your essay will be marked out with that marking scheme in mind. And then you're going to be judged on how well, as I said, you embed your anecdotes, or how clear your thesis is, and how effectively you structure the different parts of your essay and tie them together, and how clear your articulation or language is. There are many other factors. Now, just to finish, have a look at the magazine article tasks that get asked. There's a mock exam this year where my students did a personal essay, and too many of them did the same question. And in the same mock exam, there was a lovely question, a lovely magazine article question. And there is generally a magazine article question. And I just want to show you the marking scheme for last year's one. It was a lovely question. It was about our fascination with all things fashionable and the stories we tell about ourselves through our fashion choices. I mean, fashion, that could be anything from the clothes that we wear, to the car that we drive, to the music that we listen to. Fashion is a broad brush stroke. So great question, opened up loads of imagination. Now, obviously, if it's a magazine article, give it a headline, give it a subheading, just read some good magazine articles, guys. Okay, opinion pieces in magazines. Get the Sunday Times every week or subscribe to it and read articles in that magazine. It can be brilliant. The Irish Times, read the opinion pages in the Irish Times, or the Irish Times magazine on a Saturday. Super. The Irish Independent has a brilliant supplement that comes out on the weekend as well, which has a lot of kind of personal pieces of writing. But this is essentially, if you look at this magazine article, it says the effective use of some elements of feature article writing. And it says an engaging style. What does that mean? Well, it means an interesting opening. It means the use of techniques like similes or metaphors or monosyllabic language or repetition or whatever the hell to make it engaging. It's a broad statement. But then it says personal observations and insights. And it says anecdotes and obviously an informal conversational tone. Conversational, by the way, if you're writing a magazine article, it's like a conversation with the reader. So don't write up here in a very complicated way, and do use that plural language. Talk about we and our and you. Engage with the reader. Make the reader feel that you're talking to them. But essentially, that sounds very like a personal essay, and it is. The magazine article often has a big overlap with the personal essay. So you're trying to write in an engaging style. You're including little anecdotes or observations from your experience of life to support the thesis. Here, it's that fashion, that we are fascinated by fashion, and that we tell stories about ourselves through our fashion choices. 4 or 5, sections in an essay like that, 4 or 5 examples, a nice circular structure where you start off with an anecdote and then you come back to that at the end. These are the kind of things that can really be rewarded by an examiner. So just to be clear again, that when I do these mind maps for you, I do them to try and help you understand the criteria against which you're being assessed. Study them and try and apply some of the techniques in them, and then write with a bit of energy and a bit of imagination. And hopefully you'll be rewarded in what is admittedly not an exact science.